Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is Pamela, and you are watching Pam Entertainment TV, where we review movies, television series, and incidents in pop culture to see how those incidents may or may not affect our daily lives. Listen, this is one of those videos where I'm gonna need y'all to help me out, okay? I don't have a call a friend line right now, but we are going to be reviewing the series finale of Loki entitled Glorious Purpose. You see it scrolling down at the bottom. If you like what you see, please give me a thumbs up. That helps with my engagement. Also, engage me in the comments because I'm going to be asking questions on this. Because this particular season finale for me, again, I've told you all before that I am a casual watcher. I watch this for fun. I do enjoy the Marvel movies. I am not huge in the Marvel comic series. The most that I have watched as far as the comics was the She-Hulk comics. So I am not the biggest, you can't get me, you can educate me on a whole lot of things, and Loki is one of those things that I'm going to need a little bit of education on. So what I will do is for this series finale, I'm not going to go blow by blow, but I'm going to go by the things that touched me. Okay? So as we left off from the last episode, you saw Loki start to figure out that he can control his time slipping, and it didn't have anything to do with the where, the how, and the why. It had everything to do with the who. And when I saw that, I was thinking, oh, he's going to be talking to He Who Remains, which he did. And what we saw, pretty much the first half of this episode, was we saw that Loki started to get the fact that he can go back to any point in time that he wanted to go back into and try to, because you remember, was it last episode or the episode before last, where the loom had exploded? So he was going towards any time period to assist him to make sure that the loom didn't explode. Okay. So we kept going back and forth through that. There was just so many time slips and so many time things that we started going back. One of the things that interest me, and you all help me out here. So I'm going to take it character by character. And the character that I'm going to talk about is Mobius. Because remember last episode, he went back in time. We saw Mobius on the timeline. I think he was Cleveland 2022. And I can't remember if he was a branch timeline or was he, I think he was a branch timeline. But you saw that he had two sons, right? And as we saw Loki time slip through things, he eventually time slipped to the part in season one. I don't know if it was episode 3, 4, or 5, wherever it was, when they were in the, like, I'm gonna call it a conference room, but an interrogation room. And when Loki time slipped there, Mobius talked about how he was a hunter, that he and another hunter had to go and prune a child in that particular timeline because that child was going to be responsible for killing 4, 5, or 6,000 people. I'm wondering if that was his son. You remember last episode we saw his son burning TVA, a, a figurine that looked like a TVA, or an action figure that looked like a TVA hunter, that he burned it. I'm wondering if he that was his son that he actually had to prune. And it ended up that Renslayer was the one that pruned the young boy. And I'm wondering in the midst of him having his memory wiped, that he remembered that this young man was his son. and he couldn't do it. He hesitated and he couldn't do it. And I think Loki picked up on that. I think Loki kind of picked up on that because that was the first thing that I thought of. Again, this review recap is not in any type of order because, like I said, I am going to need you all to explain some things to me. And I noticed that. And so I noticed that Loki kept going back and he kept going back and he kept going back. And there was a segment because he was going back. Let me share my screen because I took some snaps. Mm. So I took some snaps, and we see him going back, and it would be different periods in time because child he kept going back with Victor Timely, and we kept seeing Victor Timely die. Well, he kept being spaghettified. I guess that's the wording for it. Every time you turn around, Loki would go back. He would go back. I think there was an instance where he asked Obi, like, "How long will it take for me to have the knowledge that you have?" And Casey was like, "Oh, it's gonna take you a long time, baby." It ended up Loki went back centuries or whenever he went back to learn the knowledge that he needed to learn in order to be able to guide Victor Timely successfully to the end of the gangplank for him to push the thingamajig into the thingamabob and then eject it out to the loom so that the loom will expand. And it worked, but they didn't figure for the fact that each branch timeline can expand an infinite amount of times. So the loom was never designed to handle that much pressure is what I'm gonna call it. The loom was never designed for that. So it was never going to handle all those timelines. It was only going to be able to handle the and I'm not going to say minuscule, but it was only going to handle so many timelines, which was the sacred timeline. But baby, every time I turn around, they had Victor Tommy going after. He was dying so much to the point where I was about to call the cops. Because we shouldn't have to see a murder, whatever. Oh, we shouldn't have had to see that so many times. I was getting a little shell shock after having watched this. We got Loki, and I'm just going through some of the shots that I took. Every time we turn around, Victor Timely was getting spaghetti fight. Every time we turn around, he seemed like he would make it. Charlie wouldn't make it. They just kept, there you go. Every time you turn around, he kept getting spaghetti fied. This was this was a funny moment because to me, when Loki introduced Ob to Victor Timely and Victor Timely to Ob, he didn't give them time to have their little romance or anything like that. It was like, hey, we got business to do. This is what you're gonna do. A B C D E F G. You're gonna go down the gangplank. You're gonna put the thingamajig in the thingamabob. You're gonna shoot it out to the loom, and then everything is gonna be fine. And they would have these, and I mean, it was over and over and over and over again until we got this successful time that he was able to do it. And he did it. And that's when they figured out that the loom was never designed to handle all those infinite timelines. And what Loki kind of figured out was they had to go back before the sacred timeline was destroyed. And at that particular time, he had to make a decision of whether or not he was going to kill Sylvie or keep her alive because she was the catalyst for the timeline, uh, all of that exploding and messing up. She was the catalyst for that. And so he was having to make a decision on that. And you see here Victor Timely, he was happy about the success, but then he kind of realized that it was not going to go the way he thought it was going to go because, like, again, one timeline can expand an infinite amount of ways. So if you've got several timelines colliding against each other, they can expand an infinite amount of ways. Just one little mishap, one little step, one little thing can create a different timeline for people. So they started to see that this was a futile effort. Something else had to change. And even with the getting Sylvie out of that situation, that's not what Loki really needed or what he wanted. He enjoyed his friends at the TVA. He enjoyed Sylvie. He enjoyed OB. He enjoyed all those things. But the way things were, what's the word that I want to use? The way things were panning out, there was really only one way to have things so that all of his friends can survive and live. And he had to make an ultimate choice because you remember, um, Loki wanted everybody to go back to TVA because he found a home, he found a kinship. Even though he was the god of mischief, he found a home and a kinship with all amongst the people that he was. But it didn't matter all the things that he did, the loom was still going to explode. And you see, like I said, I just took some shots. That's something different. Let me get out of that. We'll talk about this later. I don't know how. Let me stop sharing my screen. Let's see what's going on. I don't know how all of that got caught up in the middle of all of this. Here we go. I think so. There was a point in time in this episode where Loki, He Who Remains, and Sylvie, and they kept reliving over and over and over again when Sylvie would kill He Who Remains. And he kept saying, "See you soon, see you soon, see you soon." And at one point, Loki decided to have a conversation with him, and He Who Remained was like, "Hey, I've seen this coming. I know that you were going to be here. I see the fact that you are time slipping and all this other stuff. I peeped all of this out, and I'm just trying to figure out what it is that you're planning on doing. You can kill Sylvie, and this will help to make things right." That to me seems like the He Who Remains seemed like he was saying to me again, "You all gonna have to help me out." That he was basically saying, "Hey, you're time slipping. I've already figured all this out. There's really for me, there's only one best option, and that's for you to kill Sylvie." But Loki is not wanting to do that because again, Sylvie is a Loki, and he's not wanting to. Is it technically killing himself? Is that technically what he'd be doing? I mean, I ain't sure, but anyway, we get through all of this, and then Loki decides he makes the decision that Victor Timely can't continue to keep going out there like that. There has to be another way. And Loki decides to make the ultimate sacrifice, and he decides that he's going to go out there and he's going to be the person that changes the timeline. And he does. He goes out here, and I'm sorry for the thing, but I was just snapping off my television, y'all. He decides to go out here, and then as you see him, his clothes changes. He goes from being in his TVA clothes to going back to his pure self. And you see how everybody is like shocked, like, "What is he doing? We got to go get him. We got to go get him." uh you see his horns and everything from his helmet is coming out, and he gets to be in his true self, and he decides at that moment that he is going to wrangle and wrestle time. uh and he does that. He uses his enchantment magic to do that. He gets all the timelines. I want to try to get here. And this always reminded me of, you remember that old Loki from season one who was talking about glorious purpose? This seems like that moment that he realizes that this is his glorious purpose. And the loom explodes, but as the loom explodes, Loki is able to grab each strand of the timeline. You see how the timeline is right here? And he grabs it and I'm just going to go forward. And everybody watches him in awe and shock. And he grabs this timeline and he wrestles with the timeline, like the pieces that were dying. He revives it. You see how he revives it? And he wrestles all of these timelines into one big living tree. He gets up on his throne and he sits there with all of those timelines. Now, who is Loki now? Because I do see the pundits on Twitter telling me that because I thought was he the new he who remains, and they were saying no, he's Loki, the god of stories. Again, I don't read the comics, so I'm not familiar with all of that. But this was just the special effects department, the VFX department. This was gorgeous to me. It told a story without saying anything. You could see him wrangling and wrestling all of these different timelines and pulling them all together. There's his throne, pulling it all together. It was just to me, it was just beautiful. Because you see, that's the citadel that has like broken apart. Because you can still see the gold. Um, you can see right here all of the gold and stuff that was back at the citadel before. But the citadel has now crumbled to the point where Loki can sit on this throne. He is wrestling. You see in his hands, each one of his hands has a group of the timeline in it, and he is just wrangling all that together. He goes and he sits in this throne. And you see how again, this was just visually beautiful to me. It's told a story without having to say much. And that's what it did. It showed that he was going to be the center and he wrangled all of these timelines together. They didn't die, but he was like making sure that each one of these timelines grew, and then he enchanted it with his magic. And if you watched it from, I guess, the vantage point of Sylvie and all of them and Obi and Mobius and B-15 and Casey, it matched beautifully to this tree. And this reminded me of Asgard. Do you remember how Asgard would talk about the nine realms and everything like that? I saw on Twitter, I can't think of what it was, Ashagi talking about the living tree or whatever. It's not whatever. I just didn't pay too much attention to it, but I did pay attention that that's what they were talking about in Norse mythology. And Loki is sitting literally in the middle of this right here, but he is making sure that he has the tree. He's in the middle of all of that. You see how strong his green enchantment is, and then you can see how the branches show the different colors of the infinity stones. If I must say so myself, you got the green here with the time. You've got all the other different colors of the infinity stones going on right here, and he ends up making the living tree. So he does the self-sacrifice. Mo- uh, Loki is just destined to be by himself, and but he's in this. He's comforted in knowing that he can see all of the different timelines. He can see all the different people and things like that to different timelines. So he makes the ultimate sacrifice. This is how he gets everything to mesh with each other. Now, does this mean that all the Kangs and all the multiverses are there? I believe it does because we're going to have like the Kang dynasty or the Kang whatever it is we're going to have. But this to me was visually beautiful. Visually, this was beautiful to me. All right, so let me stop sharing my screen. So tell me, who is Loki now? Who is the god of stories? That's what I saw a lot on Twitter. People talked about he was the god of story, or he was the Aga, Agassiz, the tree. He was that person. It was a lot of different things that were going on, and like I said, Oh, that's interesting. Well, we knew that. It says that I'm just reading this from Culture Crave from Twitter. It says Loki writer Eric Martin said they have no plans for a third season. We approach this as two halves of a book. Season one first half, season two second half. And that they closed the book on Loki and the TVA. So I was trying to find the tweet. Mm. I hate when I misplace tweets. I try to save as many as I can that I get on here, but I can't think of the naming of what they were. But tell me, what did you all think about this Loki? We were even able to see Mobius to go back on the timeline and to see his children, and Sylvie took him back to see his children. We saw B-15 because now instead of the loom on the timeline, you see this big tree and that everybody is invested in making sure that all the timelines um, have equal say, but making sure that they're taking care of the timelines and all those different things. You see, the TVA has changed a little bit. I don't know if they're going to be pruning anybody or anything like that. I think, but definitely, if there's somebody that's going to come and upset this new version of the timeline, they're going to be doing something. I was confused because I didn't know what happened to A, Victor Timely, B, He Who Remains. What happened to these variants of Kang? I don't know. We see OB, we see Casey. Like I said, we see B-15. We know Loki is the tree of life, the circle of life. We see that, you know, he's no longer time slipping. Time keeps on slipping, slipping. We see he's not doing anything. He is taking control. We see Sylvie. Um, it seems like she's taking a more productive role within the TVA now. That's what it looks like. We do see Renslayer. We do see that she's in the void. And we do see Renslayer being in the void. And we do hear Elias. Because we found out, I think it was the first episode, first season of the second season, that she was the one that tamed Elias, was able to tame Elias, and then He Who Remains was able to use Elias as a weapon. So I am curious about where is He Who Remains. We do understand that most of the Kane variants are out there. So we're going to do with that. So tell me what y'all thought about this episode. If you all have any insights or anything, please put it down in the comments because I really want to know. I truly, truly, truly want to know. All right, people. Looks like Loki is over. And I enjoyed Loki. So if I want to give this episode a rating between 1 through 10, I will give it an 8. Like I said, I really enjoyed it. My only issue was that I didn't understand who Loki became. Also, what happened to He Who Remains or Victor Timely? What happened basically to those variants of Kang? Uh, as far as character development, for me, understanding who Loki was back in Thor to now, I will tell you this character, he's a beloved character to me. I couldn't stand him at the beginning, but then you start to really uh empathize with him. So his arc, his character arc was beautiful. And these writers I think they did a really good job. Um and I'm speaking from, again, I'm a casual watcher. I think they had a really good job of making me invested in Loki and making me invested in the people who were around Loki. Like I said, I still have question like, where is He Who Remains? Where is Victor Timely in all of this? Where are they? They didn't give us any indication of anything like that, and they also didn't give us any previews to what was supposed to come next. And it probably had a lot to do with the writer's strike and then the SAG-AFTRA the actors strike. But they're no longer striking anymore. They struck out a deal. So that means that a lot of movies that were pushed back, now they're all going to get a date that they're going to be back in production. I do know that Deadpool is supposed to be coming and has something to do with the TVA. I am interested in seeing that. I'm also interested in seeing the Kang Dynasty, and I do understand that a lot of thing has to do with whether or not what's going to be the outcome of this Jonathan Majors um, DV trial, because it's a trial in it, harassment, all of this stuff like this, on whether or not Marvel is going to continue to move forward with him, because if the actor strike is over, people are wanting to get to work, and they're going to be wanting to get to work pretty soon. And if he's sitting in a trial, he may or may not miss out on his opportunity. It is a misdemeanor trial, so I do not expect for it to last longer than 2 to 3 days. I just don't expect for it to last that long. So we're going to see what's going to happen with that, and whether or not they're going to move on with him as Kang, or choose another villain. We will see. All right, people. This went way longer than what I wanted it to go, but I'm glad you stuck in there with me. Again, put it down in the comments. Who is Loki now? Who do we speak of him as now? How is he going to impact the MCU moving forward? That's going to be a good question. Is this the end of Loki as far as what we're going to hear about him? Or is his transformation going to impact the MCU as we continue to go on? Let me know it down in the comments. All right. You see it scrolling down on the screen? Please help me reach 1,000 subscribers. I really do appreciate you all. Hit that like button if you like this video. Even if you didn't like the video, hit the like button. That's great for me in the engagement. And tell me why you didn't like the video, or tell me what you thought about this episode, and tell me what you thought about the whole second season. All right, people. We do this every week, y'all. Every week. And as always, people, bye bye.